You spend years building a life with someone, believing in the vows you whispered on your wedding day. You sacrifice, you compromise, you trust, but what if, one night, everything you believed in shattered with a single lie? David had always been a man of his word, a man who worked late not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Every long hour, every missed dinner, it was all for Emily, for their future. He believed that love could be measured in effort, in the roof over their heads, in the stability he fought so hard to provide. But love isn't always about provision, it's about presence. And while David was building a life, Emily was searching for something else, something she couldn't even admit to herself. Maybe it started with loneliness. Maybe it started with a drink, a glass of wine to fill the quiet, a second one to blur the edges of guilt. But when the truth finally surfaced, she had only one excuse. It was just the alcohol. But that wasn't the truth, not even close. By the time David uncovered the full truth, it was already too late. From the outside looking in, we had everything. Love that made people jealous, a home filled with laughter, the kind of bond that felt unshakable. Emily and I weren't just husband and wife, we were best friends. We had inside jokes, late-night conversations, and a rhythm that felt effortless. I would have bet my life on her. I trusted her with everything, and that trust, it made me blind. I remember our first anniversary, how she clung to my arm, smiling like she had won the lottery. The lazy Sunday mornings where she'd rest her head on my chest, tracing circles on my skin as if she was memorizing me. The way she'd steal fries off my plate, laughing as if it was our little secret. Every memory felt sacred, permanent, unbreakable. But that's the thing about memories. They don't tell you when the present is changing. Nothing changes if you don't remember it. Tell you when the present is changing. I never questioned the late nights, never thought twice about the texts she quickly swiped away, never saw the hesitation in her smile, the moments where she seemed distant, like she was there but part of her had already left. I ignored the signs, because when you love someone that much, you don't look for cracks. You convince yourself they don't exist. I thought we were unbreakable. I thought love was enough. I had no idea I was already losing her. It started with the little things. Things I told myself didn't matter. Emily had always been devoted, predictable in the best way. She had her routines, her habits, the little quirks that made her, her. But then, something changed. She started staying late at work. At first, it was once or twice a week, no big deal. Deadlines, last-minute meetings, that's what she said. But then, it became a pattern. She had come home, tired but restless, like her mind was still somewhere else. And the way she looked at me, it wasn't the same. It wasn't distance. It was something else. Something I couldn't name yet. Her phone was always face down. Always. Emily wasn't secretive. We had spent years sharing everything. Passcodes, emails, even stupid memes at midnight. But now, her phone never left her side. She'd tilt the screen away when I walked into the room, press the power button just a little too fast, laugh at something, and then lock it before I could see. Then there was the perfume. Subtle at first, a scent I didn't recognize. It wasn't hers, not the one she wore for me, and it wasn't for work either. She never cared much for impressing coworkers, but suddenly she did. Her outfits got more refined, her makeup more precise. She looked different. Beautiful, but in a way that felt intentional, like she was trying to be seen. And yet not by me. At first I told myself I was imagining things, that I was reading too much into it. I mean, people change, right? They go through phases. Maybe she was just evolving, finding a new version of herself. That's what I wanted to believe. And then I found the first clue. In that moment, my stomach dropped. It was the first time I admitted it, something was wrong, and once I started looking, I couldn't stop. I couldn't ignore it any longer. It was like a knot in my stomach that only got tighter with every passing day. Something was wrong. I didn't know what, but I couldn't shake the feeling. It was late one evening when I got the call from Sophia. She was my older sister, sharp, protective, and always ready to tell me what I didn't want to hear. David, you need to listen to me, she said, her voice tinged with something I couldn't place. I saw Emily at a bar tonight, but she wasn't alone. I felt the blood drain from my face as her words hit me. Emily? At a bar? She'd never been much for that scene, and the idea of her with someone else? It made my heart skip in a way that made my whole body cold. Who was she with? I asked, barely above a whisper. I don't know what I was hoping for, some kind of reassurance that maybe it was just a misunderstanding, but Sophia's silence told me everything I needed to know. I don't know, she said, her voice shaking. But it didn't look good, Dave. She was laughing, like she was with someone she was comfortable with. I thanked her and hung up the phone, but I couldn't move. I stood there for a long time, my mind racing with a million thoughts. I wanted to believe my sister was mistaken, but I couldn't ignore the nagging doubt that had been building for weeks. I knew I needed to know more, needed to find out for myself. But how? Emily had become so careful, so secretive. She'd put up walls I couldn't break down with words anymore. So I did what I never thought I would do. I checked her location. I opened my phone, the cold blue light illuminating my face in the dark room. My heart pounded in my chest as I tapped the app, the one I'd never used before. I hadn't wanted to, but my gut told me I had no choice. Her location popped up, and in an instant, I felt the weight of the truth crash over me. It wasn't just a bar. She was somewhere I wasn't supposed to know about. I felt my hands shake, my breath coming quicker. Everything I thought I knew was slipping away, and I didn't know what to do with the mess of emotions that followed. Was I overreacting? Was I just grasping at straws? Or was I on the verge of uncovering something that could destroy everything? I opened her messages, scrolled through them furiously, looking for any sign, any clue that might lead me to the answers I so desperately needed. But each conversation was harmless, every text routine. Nothing stood out. Nothing except for a faint sense of unease that gnawed at me with each swipe of my finger. My mind was racing. There had to be something, anything. The knot in my stomach tightened until I could barely breathe. That night, I decided I needed proof. I could feel the weight of the night pressing down on me. Every step I took felt heavier, as though I was walking toward something I could never undo. I had to know the truth, and that night, I knew my search for answers would take me places I couldn't go back from. The moment I stepped into the hotel lobby, the world around me seemed to fade. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to see what I was about to see. But the urge, the gut feeling that something was terribly wrong, pushed me forward, urging me to follow her. And so, I did. It had started with a call from Sophia, but by the time I arrived at the hotel, the pieces were already coming together in a way I hadn't wanted to imagine. Emily, my wife, the woman I had promised my life to, she was here, at this hotel, and not alone. I saw them first from across the bar. Her laughter, her smile, it was all so familiar, but this time it felt wrong. Emily, my Emily, was sitting with another man. Jason. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as if it was trying to break free. This couldn't be happening. My wife, in another man's arms? I watched them closely, trying to convince myself it was innocent, that it was some kind of misunderstanding. But no, they were too close. Their eyes lingered too long. The way she touched his arm, it was too intimate, too personal. There was no mistaking it. I was witnessing something that should have never happened. I could feel my legs weakening under me, but I kept moving, walking through the lobby like I had a purpose, like I wasn't shattered inside. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, trying to steady my breathing. I couldn't let her know I was here. I couldn't let her see me like this. I had to stay hidden. I had to get closer. I had to see it all. The elevator dinged, and my nerves were a mess. I was inches away from finding out something that would tear my world apart. I forced myself to breathe, to control the shaking in my hands. My mind kept screaming at me to turn back, but my heart wouldn't let me. I had to do this. I reached their floor, my breath shallow, my thoughts a blur. I could barely process what was happening. The hallway was quiet, too quiet. I walked slowly, deliberately, trying to stay calm. I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life, but I couldn't stop now. There was no going back. I stood in front of the door to their room, watching, waiting. The waiter arrived, delivering room service. I could hear them laughing, their voices muffled but still unmistakable. I watched through the small crack in the door, my heart in my throat. Then it happened. The waiter opened the door. I could hear them, laughter spilling out, too much laughter. I watched Emily's face. I could see the shock, the surprise, the wide-eyed fear as she saw me standing there. Her eyes met mine, and in that moment, everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and my wife came crashing down. She looked frozen, like a deer caught in headlights. Jason, too, turned his head, and I could see it in his eyes, the realization that he was caught. They both knew, but there was no denying it now. They were together, and I had walked into the very truth I never thought I'd find. But the weight of what I was seeing hit me all at once. My chest tightened and my hands shook. I wanted to shout. I wanted to demand answers. But all I could do was stand there, staring at the woman I loved, the woman I trusted, who had just shattered everything we'd built. "David," Emily's voice cracked, her words barely a whisper, but the guilt was written all over her face. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to process this. The man who had once been the one to comfort me, to hold me, was now standing there in front of me. My worst fear had been confirmed. Jason stood up, trying to smooth things over, but it was too late for that. The truth was out. There was no going back. I couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, too cramped. Every inch of me wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I was frozen in that moment, in that space between truth and disbelief. There she was, standing in front of me, my wife, the woman I thought I knew, now nothing more than a stranger with a guilty look painted across her face. The silence was deafening. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I wanted to hear what she had to say. Emily took a step forward, her eyes wild, her voice shaking as she stammered. "David," she cried, her hand reaching out toward me as though she could somehow undo everything. This isn't what it looks like." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that maybe this was all just a huge misunderstanding, a nightmare I'd wake up from. But deep down, I knew it was too late. The truth had already cracked wide open in front of me, and no amount of pleading could fix it. Jason leaned back in his chair, his expression smug, completely unfazed by the storm unfolding around him. He didn't even look sorry. "Relax, man," he said, a lazy smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "It's just a little fun. No need to make a big deal out of it." "Fun?" My voice cracked as the rage started to build inside me. The nerve, the audacity. I had been the one at home, trusting her, working hard every day, and this was how she repaid me? With him? With lies? No. It wasn't just fun. It was betrayal. I took a step toward Emily, my fists clenching so tight my knuckles turned white. "You expect me to believe that?" I asked, my voice cold with disbelief. "After all this time? After everything we've built together, you want me to believe it was just some stupid mistake?" Her eyes flickered nervously, and I saw her nervously tugging at her wedding ring, her fingers trembling as she struggled to find the right words. "It was just a stupid mistake, David," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was drunk. I wasn't thinking straight. It didn't mean anything." Drunk? That was the excuse she was going to use? Alcohol? I couldn't believe it. She expected me to believe that the woman I married had let herself fall into another man's arms because of a drink? No, it wasn't that simple. "Then why?" I said, my voice rising now. "Why did I see your messages days before this? The late-night texts, the flirtation. Was that also a mistake? Was that also alcohol? Emily froze. For a moment she couldn't speak. The guilt was all over her face. The lies she had spun were unraveling faster than she could keep up with. She looked down, avoiding my gaze, but I could see the cracks in her carefully constructed excuses. I didn't mean for it to go that far," she muttered, her voice barely a whisper. "It was just a moment of weakness. I didn't want to hurt you, David, I swear." Jason shifted in his chair, still smirking, like none of this was his fault. His casual indifference made my blood boil. "Man," he said, his voice condescending, "just let it go. You don't want to make a scene. It's not worth it." I could feel my jaw tighten, my teeth gritting as the anger surged through me. "You don't get to tell me what's worth it," I spat, my voice low but dangerous. "You have no idea what this feels like. You don't get to walk away from this unscathed." Emily's face was pale now, her eyes filled with regret, but it didn't matter. Nothing she said could undo what had already been done. The damage was done. The betrayal was real. "I'm sorry, David," she said, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted this to happen. But it did, and now I don't know how to fix it. I don't know what to say to make it right." I stood there in silence, my chest heavy with emotions I couldn't even name. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had shared my life with, had betrayed me in the most painful way possible. And Jason, the man sitting there, so smug, so sure of himself, he had been the one to help her destroy everything we had built. I couldn't look at either of them anymore. I turned and walked out of the room, the weight of their lies and their betrayal pressing down on me like an anchor pulling me into darkness. I thought I knew how this story would end, but life has a way of throwing you curveballs when you least expect it. The days that followed were a blur. Emily's endless pleas for forgiveness rang in my ears, but they felt hollow, like an echo of someone trying to convince herself more than me. "It didn't mean anything, David," she would say over and over. "I still love you. Please, don't throw it all away." But her words, they didn't reach me. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't stand the sight of the woman who had broken my heart, shattered the trust we had built over the years. So I packed my bags. One by one, I took everything I could carry, my life in a few hastily packed boxes, and left the home we had shared. As I walked out the door, I thought I could leave it all behind, the memories, the lies, the betrayal. But leaving wasn't easy, not when everything we had once shared was reduced to a bitter, aching void. My hand hovered over my wedding ring one last time before I let it drop into the box. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I wasn't ready to give up on the idea of us, or what we had been. But I knew I couldn't stay, not when she had destroyed everything. I filed for divorce. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought I could walk away and never look back. But life, as always, had a different plan. Months went by. Time blurred into a constant ache that never fully healed. But I did my best to move on, to forget her. I tried to rebuild the pieces of my life, one day at a time, until the unexpected twist hit me like a punch to the gut. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I heard the news. Jason had dumped Emily. After everything, after all the lies, after all the broken promises, he had left her. It was almost ironic. The man who had stolen her from me had done exactly what I had feared all along. He had walked away, leaving her empty-handed and alone. But I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't feeling vindicated. I should have felt relieved, but instead I just felt empty. Maybe it was because I had been the one left behind first, or maybe it was because I could see it, the loneliness in Emily's eyes, the regret, the pain. It was all there, but there was no sympathy left in me for her. Just when I thought I was done with her, that chapter of my life closed for good, I got a text. A message from Emily. I didn't want to open it, I didn't want to read her words, but something, maybe curiosity, maybe anger, drove me to unlock my phone. "I made a mistake," the text read. "I want us back. Please, David. I've realized I can't live without you. I'm sorry for everything. Can we try again? My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the message. The woman who had betrayed me, who had broken me in ways I couldn't even describe, was asking for another chance. She wanted to rewrite the story, to turn back the clock to a time before everything went wrong. I sat there, frozen, the words swimming in front of me. Was I supposed to forgive her? Was I supposed to forget everything she had done and take her back? Was I that desperate to have her in my life again, even if it meant pretending none of this ever happened? But deep down, I knew the answer. There was no going back. There was no forgiving what had been done. Emily had made her choice, and she had to live with it. So I put my phone down, my finger hovering over the screen, but I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not this time. Not when everything had already fallen apart. But in the silence that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was at play. Something deeper, something more complex than I could even comprehend. As I sat there, reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized this wasn't just about Emily and me. It was about the choices we make, the lies we tell, and the truth that eventually finds its way to the surface. And as much as I wanted to move on, as much as I tried to bury the past, I couldn't help but wonder, what would happen next? What was the next chapter of my life going to look like? Could I ever escape the shadow of what we had been? And, more importantly, would Emily ever truly let go of me? I thought I had learned everything there was to learn about love. I thought I knew what it meant to trust someone completely, to give them your heart and expect the same in return. But when the betrayal cuts this deep, when the lies are too many and the hurt too real, you realize the truth. Love isn't just about trust, it's about respect. And once that respect is gone, once the foundation of your relationship crumbles beneath you, there's nothing left to hold on to. I wish I could tell you that I came to this conclusion easily, that I woke up one day with a clear mind and a clean heart, but that would be a lie. The truth is, it took time. It took months of sitting with the pain, of reliving the moments when I thought we were happy, when I thought she was the one, and now I'm left with nothing but the echo of who we used to be. But in this silence, something shifted. I started to realize that I wasn't just mourning the loss of Emily. I was mourning the loss of myself, the person I had been before I gave everything to someone who didn't deserve it. Maybe that's the hardest part. When you love someone so deeply, you lose sight of who you are, what you want, what you deserve, and sometimes it takes a painful awakening to find your way back. So, as I stood in front of my new apartment, the door closing behind me for the first time, I realized that I had taken the first step in reclaiming my life. A fresh start, a chance to rebuild not just the life I had lost, but the person I was meant to be. But here's the thing. This isn't just my story. It's a story about all of us, about love, trust, and the things we give up along the way. And I want to hear from you. If you were in my shoes, after everything that happened, would you forgive her? Could you ever go back to someone who hurt you so deeply? Maybe you've been in a similar situation. Maybe you're facing a betrayal of your own. Or maybe you've already walked away and you're wondering if you did the right thing. What would you have done? I want to hear your thoughts. I want to know how you would handle a situation like this, because we all carry our own experiences with us. And maybe, just maybe, we can help each other find a little bit of healing along the way. So if you want to hear more real-life betrayals, heartbreak, and redemption stories that are raw, unfiltered, and real, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because, trust me, you're not alone in this, and together, we can face the toughest moments of our lives. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for sharing in this journey with me. I'll see you in the next one.